Masculine and feminine energy is something I avoided learning about for the longest time, and I really wish I hadn't. Because it answered so many questions I've been asking for years. Why did I get rejected so much? Why didn't any of my relationships work out? Why did that one girl from 4 years ago ghost me? But now, after understanding this topic, it's finally all clear. It's because I was not in my masculine energy. Now, let me explain what that means. Masculine and feminine energy has nothing to do with gender roles or sexual orientation. Every single person, male or female, have both energies within them. These energies are really just ways in which we behave. Sort of like personality characteristics. Examples of masculine energy traits are purpose, confidence, self-discipline, logic. Masculine energy is very based in doing, and it's very action-oriented. Someone who's trying to grow a business, manage a team, trying to become the best at a skill. These all require an abundance of masculine energy, regardless of their gender. Feminine energy is very nurturing, compassionate, caring, intuitive. A therapist, a teacher, a nurse, for example. These are all professions that require a lot of feminine energy. Basically, masculine energy is more about logic and thinking, whereas feminine energy is more about emotions and feeling. And although each of us possess both energies, men predominantly default to a more masculine energy, and women tend to default towards a more feminine energy. Although this isn't always the case. Some men are more in their feminine and some women are more in their masculine. Typically, you want to become comfortable knowing when to use both of these energies at the appropriate time. Sometimes you're going to need more of your masculine, sometimes you're going to need more of your feminine. I'll give you a personal example of how I use both. In order to create these videos, coming up with the idea, the filming, the editing, to get from point A to point B to produce this content, this all requires a very masculine energy because it requires a lot of drive and ambition. It requires a lot of self-discipline and a lot of logic in order to make everything work. But when I'm working one-on-one with a client in a private session, I have to be a good listener, I have to be very compassionate, very empathetic. This is me being more in my feminine energy. This is why jobs such as working in mental health, caring for other individuals, therapists, teachers, etc. are generally seen as more feminine roles. But if you're like a construction worker, an engineer, an athlete, those predominantly require more of a masculine energy, you see? But like I said, no matter what you're doing, it's important to get in touch with both of these energies in order to really succeed at whatever it is you're doing. Having a good balance of both is ideal. Now, when it comes to relationships, typically a man who is more in his masculine energy is going to attract a woman who's more in her feminine energy. A woman who's more in her feminine is going to be attracted to a man who's more in his masculine. Someone who's balanced, has a good balance of both, is also going to be attracted to someone who is balanced in both energies. Although this case is a little more rare. You ever notice how in a relationship, regardless of gender, there's usually one who acts as the leader and the decision maker? Like there's one who usually wears the pants in the relationship and then the other one kind of just submits. Even a very like weak, kind of timid man will usually have a wife or a girlfriend who's playing like more of the masculine role. This is the polarity of masculine and feminine energies. This is the duality of the universe. It has to be this way. Black and white, yin and yang, up and down, love and hate. Everything has a polarity or an opposite. So if you're a man who naturally has a more masculine energy, you're probably attracted to very feminine women. Most guys are, but what happens to a lot of guys is that they meet this type of woman and the dynamic starts out good, that masculine and feminine polarity is there. She has a very high attraction to him from the start, but over time it gets lost and you end up getting ghosted or friend zoned or something like that. It just doesn't work out. Because what probably happened was, like I said, she was initially really attracted to your masculine energy, but then maybe you did or said some things where it put you in a more feminine role and now that attraction has been lost. This happens to a lot of guys. Now this doesn't necessarily mean you are feminine. It's actually not that big of a thing. It just means that maybe you did a couple of things, maybe you acted in a way that kind of just changed the dynamic. It just made her see you in this different spotlight. It just made her kind of portray you as a more feminine for whatever reason. So I'll illustrate an example for you. Picture like a real alpha male, like bodybuilder type. This guy's mostly in his masculine energy. He lifts weights, he does combat sports, he has a lot of drive and ambition, you know, all those stereotypical sort of masculine traits. But as soon as he starts dating a woman he likes, he instantly turns into like a weak, nice guy. And then slowly over time, she starts losing attraction to him. That's because he went from being in the masculine energy to now being in the more like feminine type of energy. And this right here was my problem. The polarity would start out right, there would be very high sexual attraction from the beginning. Then all of a sudden she would start losing attraction or end up ghosting me or something. And I couldn't understand it at the time, but now I see why. I would get unhealthily attached. I would try to move things way too quickly. I would treat her like my own personal therapist and overshare all this information. You know, this changed the whole dynamic, and this is why guys get friend zoned. This is essentially the essence of friend zone. This happened to me a couple times actually. It's important to note, in order to maintain this polarity, this doesn't mean you have to be some big macho guy who's always making the decisions and like controlling her and all this stuff. That's not what that means at all. That's just a stereotype. You don't have to get all paranoid and think this means you have to start acting like some fake alpha male. That's not what it is. In order to maintain that polarity, all you really have to do is stand confident in your own frame. And you can't ever let outside factors sway you away from that. So for example, when a girl starts playing games, or she tries to test you, or maybe she goes a little distant or cold, most guys will get all bent out of shape over this. They'll get all emotional and they'll start trying to appease her to make things right. But in this situation, you don't want to let that kind of nonsense affect you. It's normal for some women to go through different emotions and maybe they'll change up a little bit. And that's what I didn't really understand. I would let it kind of like affect my whole mood, and I would instantly go from being more in my masculine to now more in my feminine because I wanted to make things right. And this is common for a lot of us. I mean, I remember this one girl used to literally ask me to do the stupidest shit. She used to ask me to like bring her a stick of butter. Just the most ridiculous stuff, and I would bend every time. And this would sort of put me in a very feminine kind of submissive role. And the reason this would happen and why it happens to most guys is because we have something called wounded masculine and feminine energies. Wounded energy basically just means we went through some sort of trauma, some sort of childhood experience that made it very difficult for us to stay put in our natural energy that we're meant to be in, or at the very least have a very healthy balance of both. So this comes from things like having abusive parents, being neglected as a kid, being bullied, lack of a male role model, just sort of those type of childhood traumas. So this was my problem. My dad was very emotionally abusive and very overly critical of me, which led to me having a very wounded masculine energy. I was never given that space growing up to really be comfortable with who I was or be comfortable with myself. So I was kind of all over the place. I would go from masculine to feminine all the time very quickly, especially in the dynamic of relationships. Like I said, I would start off in my masculine energy and then I would get overly attached to the girl and I would quickly resort to my feminine energy. And being wounded always results in things like nice guy behaviors, indecisiveness, the inability to lead, an intense fear of rejection, and the number one attraction killer, neediness. Neediness is literally destroying your masculine energy and it's destroying any ounce of attraction that a woman may have for you. And let me explain why. One of the main proponents of masculine energy is being strong and centered. And when you display very needy and clingy behaviors, this puts you in a very wounded feminine energy. Think about it, right? A very attractive, secure feminine woman is not ever going to be with like a very needy kind of nice guy. These types of behaviors are almost always going to turn her off because it absolutely destroys that sexual polarity. You ever notice how women can get away with being a little needy and clingy? Unless it's like completely excessive, it's usually not going to make you any less attracted to her. And the neediness thing, it's not just in the case of dating, it's with all things in life. Anything that you approach from a place of lack or from a place of like, I'm not enough without this person or this thing, is reinforcing the belief that you are not whole and enough with who you are right now. And you always are. We are always enough right here in this present moment, even though it might not feel like it. And you have to heal that wound that makes you feel like you're not enough. This is the part that most creators leave out. Most of them just tell you to stop being needy, but that doesn't really help. And I know healing probably isn't really what you want to hear because you're probably more in a masculine energy and you're focused more on things like personal development, building businesses, going to the gym, things like that. And things like meditation and healing require being in a more passive receiving state, which is being more in a feminine energy. This is why it's important to understand that we have both energies and we need to use both of them. A lot of men dismiss the idea that we need to get in touch with our feminine side and that we should just be masculine all the time. Trust me, when you begin to heal, you're going to naturally gravitate towards the energy that is most comfortable to you, especially in the dynamic of a relationship. And you do this by learning to connect with yourself through deep meditation. There's many guided meditations on YouTube that you can do that will help you heal this. And you also heal it by noticing when these behaviors come up. Notice when the nice guy behaviors start to surface and be honest with yourself about them. Always take a step back from the situation and give yourself some time and space to connect with yourself. Awareness is literally the key to healing this. You have to be able to identify when that inner nice guy is starting to surface and you have to make peace with him. Let him come up, but don't act on him. When you have a wound like this, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations that cause you to lead, they cause you to be assertive, they cause you to possibly face rejection, and allow yourself to feel the fear and the tension that comes up with it. And make peace with it. This is going to be uncomfortable and difficult, but that's what makes it so rewarding. You also heal from this by revisiting your past and sort of doing an inventory of everything that ever happened to you. I highly recommend journaling about this. Write about your childhood, your relationships with your parents, your family members, times you were bullied as a kid. This is called shadow work, all right? This all has to be done regularly. Remember, this is years of mental conditioning that we are trying to break. It's going to take time. Be patient with yourself. And you are still going to make these mistakes, and that's all right. Pick yourself back up every time and get back on track. The only way you're going to see progress is over a very long period of time. You're going to look back at some of the ways you used to behave and some of the ways you used to let people treat you, and you're going to literally be amazed at how far you've come. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for being here. I hope it was informative. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.